All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Irrational Confidence Podcast. We're switching over. We're talking college basketball. It is getting into March Madness season. And if you're like all of us, you can't wait for the tournament to start. You can't wait for the bracket pools. So today we are going to teach you guys how to do a different style of bracket pool, something that you can do with your friends, something we've been doing a long time. And the man who's been with me for, I don't know now, 17 or 18 years of doing the Hostile Takeover, my co-host, Fresh. How you doing, buddy?
There are some things in the year we all look forward to, and Hostile Takeover time is one of those maybe top 10 items. It's like on your checklist. We all sort of gather up, pick our teams for the bracket and just let it run through and let the point spreads fall as they may. And it's exciting. It's a lot of fun. It's a very unique way of having a bracket pool.
Right here, Fresh. So this video here is kind of a how-to run a different side. It was referred to as a hostile takeover or a takeover pool. You need, in this video, you're going to learn about how to do it, what you need to do, and maybe how to really set up with your friends if this was a style. It's a little bit better than a normal bracket pool where you just kind of take out a blank bracket and you fill out winners and losers. Because if you have a team that goes out, hey, your champion goes out first weekend and you're like, oh man, well now I'm not going to watch the rest of the tournament. This gives you an opportunity to keep your stake within the game. Yes, there's always going to be that one unfortunate soul who winds up being out the first weekend, but it is something that kind of keeps you a little more invested, a little longer term, and makes the game so much more exciting, especially in the last couple of minutes.
Yeah, I mean, you sort of have a lot of options open for you at all times throughout the entire tournament. It just keeps every game locked in, every possession's locked in. It gives you the full spectrum of it and has you really on the edge of your seat.
Right. So the very first thing we're going to talk about here, people, is that you're going to be operating out of the 64 team bracket when you're doing a hostile takeover. Now, whether you decide that you want to draft the teams by doing like a snake draft, 1 through 8, 1 through 16, you're going to pick all teams within the 64 field bracket, not the 68 person bracket. For this to be effective, you're going to need a multiple of 4 people in the pool total. So you could go anywhere as low as 4 teams if you guys just want to have 4 group of buddies doing it. 4, 8, 16, 32. If you wanted to get real crazy, go to 64. I think that would be a little bit nuts. 16's the sweet spot. Like if you can get 16 guys in, that gives everyone 4 different teams in the tournament, gives you a little bit of an advantage. And again, 2 ways that you can do it. You can do a snake draft where the person who drafts number 1 all the way down to 16, but the person who drafts number 16 will flip and get the 17th pick. Fresh, do you prefer drafting or kind of having like teams assigned to you?
I love drafting. I think any kind of fantasy sports, whatever you want to do, you get the chance to draft and control your own destiny. It shows the human element. It puts a little strategy because everybody has different ways of looking at it. We'll talk about strategy a little bit later on, but you start getting 16 people involved and everyone's thinking is different. Do they go with the favorites? Do they go with, teams that may have a bigger spread or middle of the bracket squads and how they want to play it out? It throws that wrinkle in there that you don't know what to expect. Because if it was just giving out to everybody, you kind of lose that connection, that personal, feel. I selected a team. These are the guys I want to see run through. By drafting, it keeps a lot of open for interpretation and a lot of unknown variables come into play.
Absolutely. All right. So once you have all of your teams drafted, one thing you need to know is that your game is not playing against winners and losers. You are playing this game against the point spread for each round of the matchup. First thing, because of all of the different websites out there, select a website that people have access to and that you can post the point spreads. Now, you might have one person. How we do it, we have a singular person who sends out the point spreads every day and say, these are the locked in spreads. You want to pick a time to lock in spreads because you will see some fluctuation. One site might have a game at 6.5 points where the other site might have a game at 6 points there. You want to lock in at saying this is what the spreads are at this time. You want to try to be consistent as much as you can. Again, sometimes it stinks where you go, hey, the spread for a 10 o'clock game may be locked in at 11 o'clock in the morning, and that spread changes as some late money might come in on it. But you want to have a way that you just stay consistent with it. Now, when we say about the point spread, I'm just going to use an example early from last season, looking at the 2023 Hostile Takeover. For an example, in the Midwest Regional last year, the number one overall seed was the Houston Cougars. They're playing Northern Kentucky. In that game, Houston was a heavy favorite in that game. They were a 19.5-point favorite. In that, let's say, for example, I chose Houston as my first overall team. I think that they're going to roll through. Fresh over here has the North Kentucky, and they same with that 19.5 points. With a takeover, for me to keep Houston going forward in the tournament, Houston has to cover that 19.5 points. That means they have to win by 20. If they don't win by 20, Fresh takes them over. So Houston in this game won by 11 in that game. Automatically, I have just lost Houston. Fresh has Houston in the next round.
We sort of keep moving through. That's where every possession comes into play, whether it's free throws late. All of it matters. Every point matters. Every possession matters. And sometimes you have to look at the point spreads. Is it too much to cover, especially in those early first-round matchups where you're going to obviously see larger amounts of, differential, as opposed to maybe you get the Sweet 16 Elite 8 where that's a 3.5 or a 4 point where the games are tighter and at least, makes it a little bit more of just win straight up clean and move on. So you have to sort of play strategy from that perspective.
And the one other thing that you need to know when running a takeover pool or hostile takeover pool, it is the push will always go to the favorite team. So example here, let's say Baylor last year was playing Santa Barbara, and Baylor wins that game by 18 points. If Baylor is an 18-point favorite, Baylor has covered the spread at 18 points. That exact spread, they go on to the next round as well. So there's a couple of things that people need to have some confusion with at times. You want to make sure that you lay it out very clearly early on. Hey, this is the website we're going to use. These are when I'm going to try to lock in the spreads, or whoever's running your pool. And then you kind of just keep track as you go along here. And each one of us is different. Me personally, I still keep a paper bracket. I still keep that as we go along. We have a buddy who is in our pool who will do a graphic for us and let us know who takes that stuff over. But for me personally, I always am keeping a paper bracket. That's my style. You might have an Excel spreadsheet. You might just have just a group text on your phone going on. That's some of the best part about this, because what it's going to do, the difference between this and a normal pool, this pool is going to get real exciting. And those late, as Fresh alluded to, those last seconds of a game, when you get down to a 7-point game and the spread is sitting there at 7.5 or 8, and you're begging for them to foul, or they don't foul, or you have a guy who the coach has cleared the benches, and that 13th man who's never seen the floor all season long gets an opportunity to play in the NCAA tournament, jacks up a 3 as the time goes up. That doesn't change it, but you wind up missing out on the spread on that. That's what makes these games so exciting. That's why this style of pool is so much better than just your normal type of picking the winner type of pool.
Yeah, and it's something where people who study, for all year long, they're watching every single game, they're seeing everybody, they're watching the rankings, they know who's amazing. It opens up to anybody can be involved in the pool. You don't have to have a skill set. You don't have to have watched every single game and give full analysis on who's the best players, the way they run their defense. This is more of a at chance, luck of the draw, the way the ball bounces in the end of the ball game or in the middle of the ball game comes into play. It gives everybody an opportunity. I know your wife has actually participated in multiple years where she drafts her 4 teams and she's in, and you roll with whatever happens, whether you have the favorite cover or the upset happens, or they just don't cover the spread. All the things are open and at play for everybody involved.
And it depends on how you want to do a pool. Each one, depending on whatever you're going to, if you're doing this just for fun, great. If you're going to put a buy-in with it, great. decide on where you want to pay out with your buy-in. Ours is a $50 buy-in for our example here. We may pay out at the Elite Eight, and a person may get $20 back if their team makes it to the Elite Eight. When I say make it to Elite Eight, you get into that game, but you don't advance onward. So you kind of go until your team is no longer playing. And we always do it. You got to get out of the first weekend, maybe win that first game of the second weekend there to really start saying, okay, hey, we're going to give you some sort of prize along with it as well. So this is just a fun way to do it with your friends and make the NCAA tournament get real exciting. The other way you can do it, if you guys don't want to do a draft style, I've seen it done before like this. Everyone draws a number. You wind up getting, if I were to draw, again, using last year's bracket, Alabama was the number one overall seed in the South. If I get Alabama as the number one overall seed in the South, I might get the number 16 seed, or I might get depending on how you guys want to do it, you don't get everyone gets attached to a certain area. I might get the number 11 seed down there in the West bracket there. So again, you kind of do this cross thing where you assign your teams diagonally depending on luck of the draw. That's another way I've seen it done. Not as fun. I like the draft style personally, but everyone's different. Maybe you don't have enough time to get together for a draft and do all that stuff. This is a fun way of just still doing it, assigning everyone a team, and then they kind of roll with where they're going with.
Well, it's a great thing you brought up the timing thing, because obviously Selection Sunday, and then there's Tuesday and Wednesday games, and then Thursday the tournament really, in my opinion, begins. The reason why we say, and the reason why Seth said 64, not 68, because those 2 days in between those playing games are so open-ended, they really don't, we want to see what happens come Thursday and Friday. So you could draft either Tuesday night, Monday night, Wednesday night, whatever works best for you, but really you're just saying, I got play-in XYZ if it's the winner of Washington and Kansas. Well, I'm obviously not going to be a playing game, but as an example, you take playing game there, and then that winner it could be your team in the 64 field once Thursday and Friday tip off. It takes away the ambiguity from those two playing games. It kind of just opens it up and say, hey, we're dealing with what happens on Thursday and going from there. And sometimes they make runs. We've seen VCU do it. You never know. Sometimes you get lucky and you just head on down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Fresh. So now that we've given everyone kind of a outline of how to run a bracket pool along this way, a takeover style, hostile takeover here, Fresh, do you have any strategies that you utilize as well? I don't know. Have you ever won a takeover?
I've made it to the Final Four once, once or twice, but I've never actually won the overall and been the final team standing. I've kind of changed up my strategy every year, so to figure out the way, what works. But sometimes I always come back to, I try to have two teams in the same side of the bracket to try to help eventually having them play each other later on, whether it's in the Elite Eight, if you think both teams have the talent, whether they navigate themselves, you come into the Elite Eight game with both teams, you're set aside with the Final Four squad. And try to have yourselves paired where one game is kind of a walkover and you kind of, you set up and you guaranteed at least moving on. But ideally later on down the road, obviously you need to have things happen ahead of time. When it comes to drafting, if I'm the first four, you kind of evaluate the field. Is there one or four elite teams that you just know are going to be studs? If you're in the middle of the pack, you kind of just run a crapshoot. Maybe look for that 12-5 matchup or that 4 seed that's pretty solid to get you down the road. But I kind of try to pair up strategically. If I can get two teams that side of the bracket that hopefully will meet each other in the 16 or Elite 8, that kind of makes it a little easier road to the Final Four for yourself. Because that just the dollar signs in the very end pay off.
Yeah, I don't want to give away all my tips here because I won our takeover pool last year, and I've won it other years prior. I've made it into the Final Four.
You had Connor Stallions involved. There's definitely asterisks around that. So there's some shady stuff happened last year, especially since you're running the whole thing.
Right. And for the first 5 years, I couldn't make it out of the first weekend here. So I take a very different strategy than Fresh has. My goal when I'm drafting, I want to take as many favorites as possible. That is my goal. I want to have teams that have They're on the favorite side of the point spread. I did a little bit of research. Favorites are usually, over the last couple of years, around a 58, 59% accuracy rate. It's just making sure that you pick which favorites you're looking for. I also like to put some ideas behind teams I think will do really, really well. First couple of things I look at for a team that I think will do a nice run in the tournament is some stereotypical things that you'll think about. Do they have good guard play? Guard play is extremely important in the NCAA tournament. Do they rebound the basketball well? Is there a strong rebounding differential? So if you take a look at during the season, they wind up are +8 or 9 in the rebounding category. That shows that they're keeping their opponents off the glass and that they're able to either get second chance points or they're able to get, hold their opponent to one shot possessions there. And then the other one is I'm looking at 3-point percentages. I don't need a team that jacks up like 30, 40 threes a game. I need you to take a little bit over 20, 25 is kind of the area I want. I want you to be able to shoot the three ball as well. I need to see them shooting at around anywhere from a 37 plus clip is kind of where I'm looking for in that one. Those are the teams I'm on the hunt for. The reason I want to take a favorite is because my goal when I'm drafting my teams is I want to have the best opportunity to get out of the first weekend. Because our prizes start out at the Elite Eight, my goal is to get out of the first weekend where I'm down to 16 because we've cut the field in half by 75% at that point. So there's a good most likely you're going to be down to one team. So my goal is to get as many favorites, the ones that might have an opportunity to win that first game in the second weekend. Once you get to the second weekend, it kind of starts to become a crapshoot as well. But those spreads start to shrink. So if you think that if I can get this team to the second weekend and you don't have that underdog story or anything along those lines, you don't have a Loyola Marymount type of thing, a VCU like Freshstead, George Mason, all of those teams, you're going to start seeing spreads around the 5, 6, 7 mark in the Sweet 16. Those spreads will start to get smaller and smaller when you get down there. So you keep those things in mind. So that's why I'm always looking for as many favorites as possible. And then maybe a plucky team. My last pick may be a team that shoots the three really well and has a strong rebounding differential that maybe that they can keep up with one of the big boys. And like maybe I can find that Northern Kentucky to take over the number one seed going forward, or a team like Miami who kind of gets hot at the right minute. And some of it is complete dumb luck too.
Well, you kind of look at opening weekend, people always think, well, why don't you just take the top 4 seeds, right off the bat? It also depends on the matchup. I mean, what if you get stuck with a 37.5%, 37.5 point spread or 34 point spread? You're kind of like sweating. You're like, I just drafted somebody, and the odds of them covering that 34 is pretty tough because they might call up the dogs late in the second half, especially if they're running away with it. Or like you said, some kid out there who finally sees some action, haven't played all year, just jacks up a 3 in the tournament. It goes in, and that takes it down to 31. Those large spreads can be pretty scary once it pops. And that kind of actually has some people shy away from just having a lock as a 1 seed right off the bat. You kind of want to you kind of want to have a solid matchup in that first one that the odds makers push that a little more in your favor so that you can cover it and move on. Getting out of that first weekend, getting out of that Thursday, Friday matchup is probably the toughest of all because those initial matchups, those spreads can be all over the place and teams come out a little sloppy, a little slow in the first game. I've seen it where I've taken a team, they didn't cover the first game, and they covered the rest of the tournament and won the national championship. And you kind of sitting there staring at yourself. You're like, you got to be kidding me right now. But that first game, they come out, sleepwalk, they survive, and then they turn it on in the weekend and then on through the Sweet 16 and so on and so forth. So it's sometimes just dumb luck. Sometimes it's just strategy and knowing how to pick up those teams and where you want to play them.
Right. And you're always looking for maybe that sheer dominant team. Think, for an example, of the Gators back in 07. Think about maybe the late, the 2000, I think it's 11 or 2009 UNC Tar Heels. I believe they covered all the way through the tournament. Last year, UConn covered all the way through the tournament. You're looking for, if you want to take a lottery ticket kind of draw at one of those teams, a team that kind of you feel just has everything and that they've shown that they can compete with everyone. Last year, we really didn't have a team in those top 8 spots as well. You take a look at the number 1 lines. Only one number 1 team covered last year. One got upsetted. The other two didn't cover the very first weekend point spread there. That makes it very, very tough for those 1 seeds as well. You take a look at the 2 line, kind of same thing as well. One of the 2 seeds got upset, and then the 2 of the other 3 covered, 1 didn't. So those big point spreads that first weekend can be a blessing. They can be a curse because, you know, you could have the one where it's Kansas against Howard and the Jayhawks just boat race Howard and they go on and they wind up getting upset in the second round, which is tough, but you at least made it out of that first week or first day.
Yeah. I mean, think of it, folks, if you haven't done this before, like a fantasy football draft. Your first round pick, you hopefully, you're kind of putting all of them, but it's really your team is built by the rest of the draft, the next couple rounds. So the first round, just go with somebody, roll with it. With the second, third, and fourth picks you have, usually the second and third, you're the only ones you have control over. That's where you can maybe, play a little luck, have a little curveball out there, take some chances, and not too worry as much about the spread, but more worry about where the matchups are and the road to the Final Four from that perspective.
Right. And people will point to FAU. FAU barely escaped Memphis in the opening round. So you take a look at what they did and making it all the way to the Final Four. Same with San Diego State. San Diego State last year had a couple of real close scares along the way. And then, wind up, they only win by a point over Creighton. They win a 6-point game against College of Charleston. Again, everyone's going to point, oh, well, they blew out Furman. Well, yeah, Furman upset Virginia prior, and Furman kind of shoots their shot. And then you see what San Diego State does to Alabama. That's like the big one on that part. No one really sees this coming. But it's a lot of fun here, Fresh, and it's my favorite time of the year. I love doing a hostile takeover. It's the best way to do a bracket pool. I don't even fill out a bracket anymore. Really? I mean, I might throw one on ESPN or CBS or something like that for giggles, but this is the only style of pool I'll do anymore.
Yeah, same here. It's a lot of fun, and especially getting all our buddies together where we have, I think all-time records, and everyone just sort of jawing back in the text message, going back and forth when big games come to an end. It's just a lot of fun, and when you get everyone together, engaging like that, it makes it even much better.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, folks, you've been listening to another episode of the Irrational Confidence Podcast. Hey, before you head out of here, hit that subscribe button up there for us. Hit the notification bell. Get notified every single time we drop a new episode. We're going to come at you with some more college basketball stuff. We're going to hit some college football when we get close to the NFL draft. We got all sorts of new content coming your way. We don't have an off season. So Fresh and I, we're going to keep churning out the episodes. We're going to keep engaging with you. Make sure you follow us on social media. We're very active on the X, formerly known as Twitter. Fresh, 29,000 followers on the X account right now. I mean,
29,000 best friends. 29,000 best friends. Right. Everyone engaging.
A great community too that we're involved with. There's a great sports community that you guys need to start interacting with. It's fun.
Hit us up on, obviously not just there, but subscribe for our YouTube channel, Spinnable Sports YouTube. Building that, get a lot of comments. We love hearing from you there. And then obviously spinnablesports.com and reading our articles and getting our feedback that's not vocal but really written, and really bring it all together from every single aspect.
Yeah, absolutely, folks. And hey, I hope you guys run a hostile takeover pool. If not, okay, but give it a try. See if you can get 8 friends out there. Give it a shot. It's a lot of fun. Once you go back, you'll never go back to a normal pool ever again.
Nope. It's a lot of fun. You'll be locked in. You guys will feel the intensity.
Yep.
And with that, everybody, hope you enjoy the Hostile Takeover. Get ready for March Madness. We're almost there. We'll talk to y'all later. Bye, y'all.